Hello and welcome to IGN's E3 2021 Nintendo Direct reaction show. I'm your host, Brian Altano. We just saw a Nintendo Direct plus this Treehouse presentation, all that fun stuff. Here to unpack it are my friends, Casey DeFreitas, Zach Ryan, Joe Skrebels. What else can we say? Let's get right into it. Breath of the Wild 2. We got new stuff for Breath of the Wild 2. I thought we weren't going to. I thought this show was starting with a troll, but I think we're good.
It definitely started with a troll. That was cruel and unusual that they would open with a shot of Ganondorf because we thought we were going to get right into it.
Yeah. I don't want to boast, but I knew immediately that was a reference to that terrible Tekken throwing off a cliff scene. So I'm being trolled by it.
And then we got all the characters.
It's the best gift there is.
Okay, so I really want to talk about Breath of the Wild 2. I think we expected to see it today, but I don't think we expected to see this much. This gave me chills. It made me tear up a little bit. I'm a grown man. I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm confident. And I will say there's so much to unpack here. We got all these new mechanics, new locations, new weapons and stuff like that. Zach, I want to start with you because Twitter's already going crazy here with different theories. This feels like it's tying in a bunch of different Zelda games, potentially.
Yeah. I want to unpack something that you just said. You said we didn't expect to see this much. That trailer's only 1 minute and 38 seconds long, right?
I know, but it's
the last part of that is just a shot of the castle raising and the date. Right? It's supposedly coming next year, and they said that they went out of their way to say that they're aiming for 2022, which means maybe not. We'll see. But I think the thing that's most interesting is all the theories that are flying around right now about. Is it set across multiple timelines? Are you playing different characters? How does it tie into these other Zelda games? Because there's a lot of things that are pointing towards Skyward Sword. Obviously, the idea that you're playing in the islands above Hyrule, which, as we know, all the lands above Hyrule were featured as the Skyloft and Skyward Sword. We are getting a Skyward Sword remastered version here pretty shortly, which is like, should you brush up on your Skyward Sword lore as you get ready for Breath of the Wild 2? Because maybe they're tied closer together. We see a lot of stuff from that hints at potential ties to Twilight Princess. Link's cybernetic looking arm here looks a lot like the stuff that we saw from Twilight Princess. But I think it's also important to remember that the original Breath of the Wild had a ton of other references to older Zelda games, the Koroks, stuff tied to Majora's Mask, different locations that were kind of burned out or knocked down in across Hyrule. So this could be like, obviously it's all pure speculation, and maybe this stuff that's tying in is just like a nice wink and a nod, but maybe it does have bigger ramifications on the story. Obviously we're just gonna have to wait and see what that means.
It did feel weird that we got Skyward Sword announced for Switch when there were a lot more obvious Zelda games, but maybe things are starting to connect now with all of this. Casey, one thing that I find really peculiar about this trailer is that we never really see Link's face. And now there are tons of theories about what that means. Could we be looking at like a multiple Link scenario? We've seen many Links in the past before with Four Swords Adventures. That's always a more sort of campy approach. And obviously we saw Zelda in the original teaser for this game. What's going on with the playable character in this game?
Yeah, I noticed that too, that you never see Link's face in any of the gameplay in this, which really weirded me out, but it looks like they're very distinctively two different characters. There's one Link, we assume, in the sky, and another Link on the ground. Not only is their hairstyle different, but it looks like the one with the long hair that is up in the sky primarily is the one with the weird arm. However, we do see the one on the ground have some attachments on the left arm, but the left arm doesn't seem deformed in any way, but he does use a flamethrower attachment, which is pretty cool. But there are a lot of theories going around that the Link on the ground is actually just might just be a placeholder, and maybe they're just gonna like, just kidding, it's been Zelda the whole time. I don't know if that's actually gonna happen or not, but it looks like they're very distinctively two Links, and as Zach was saying, are these two Links across two different time periods? And I think one of the things that hints to that is that the Link in the sky, their shoes look pretty primitive compared to the boots and equipment that the Link that we know from Breath of the Wild. I have so many questions. There is so much Treehouse, and I rewatched this trailer like 12 times because I was so interested in everything that goes on.
Joe, what was something that really stuck out for you in this trailer? Were you flipping out watching this like the rest of us, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like this is all I could have hoped for. Like you say, it's a minute and a half just full of things to speculate on, and so what arm is the thing that got me, but specifically the fact that it seems to presage the idea that this isn't just a sequel to Breath of the Wild that's going to use the same mechanics in a new place, in a new setting with a new story. Like, we see new abilities in there, we see new weapons. You know, you're obviously expecting a certain amount of that stuff, but I think it's easy to forget now that it's 4 years later and a lot of people think it's the best game ever made, that Breath of the Wild did loads of stuff that we weren't expecting, and it encouraged you to with its world and be creative. And there are moments in this, you know, we see the new version of the stasis power, we idea that we've got new ways to mess with stuff. That's what's really exciting to me in this.
Yeah, I'm wondering, and let's just check the pulse on this one. Do you all think that breakable weapons will return? I feel like that was such a core part of the last game. It seemed like people came around to it, you know, like it was an issue early on in the game when your weapons are breaking constantly. Back into the game doesn't seem like too much of a problem. Most people kind of liked it. So what do you think about this one?
I don't know. I'm of two minds. I think that the weapon durability thing was like a major sticking point for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people's issues with Breath of the Wild come directly from the idea that, like, oh, the weapon durability is bad. I personally really liked it because I thought it really enforced the idea that you have to switch up weapons. You have to try different fighting styles. You have to try all these different things. And that's why they're showering you with these weapons constantly, right? So I would like to see it make a return. Maybe that durability could be increased so that stuff isn't breaking as often for folks that didn't dig it in the first place. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a core tenet to what Breath of the Wild is as a new, you know, entry in the Zelda series. So I'd like to see it stick around.
Yeah, I actually wonder if some of the arm mechanic stuff could maybe potentially be a standby weapon that you do have in case of emergency when all your weapons break. That's a good way of sort of meeting fans in the middle of going, hey, we kept the weapon breakability stuff, but also, you know, if everything goes south, you have this unshatterable firearm, Mega Man style, and you can do cool stuff with it.
I like that.
Yeah, how do you feel about like the weapon combat and stuff like that in this game, Joe? Do you think they're going to expand on this a lot? Maybe just dump in tons and tons more weapons, or where do you think this will go?
I guess to me it looks more, and you know, who knows what they're leaving out of a trailer, but to me it looks more like they're emphasizing the idea that you can do different things as Link innately, as you say, like that kind of backup set of stuff. You know, you have your bomb power and that kind of stuff. I could see that kind of thing being expanded. To me, like, I'm also a big fan of the weapon durability, and I think what they'd lose by getting rid of it, if they did, and you know, we're way into speculation now, is the idea that, you know, Breath of the Wild gave you so much. It really rewarded you at every turn. Like, you would go around a corner and find new stuff, and it felt like you were constantly being given things for looking around you. Right. And I think you would lose that if you were, you know, kind of paring back how many times you were finding things. So I think, like you say, I think there's a great midpoint there by going, look, here's an expanded arsenal of powers that you always have, and also all the other stuff that you can find around. I wouldn't expect that to go too wild beyond that.
Casey, very quickly, we still haven't seen dungeons, and that's something that a lot of us are asking for. We did see the castle lift up in the air, which seems to me like the kind of awesome cutscene you would see before going into a dungeon in a Zelda game. But most of this still is kind of still above ground. Do you think we'll get dungeons in this game? Is there anything here leading you to think that we will?
I think even more so than the does fall down into the depths, and I think might be reading into this a little bit, but that might suggest that we have to go down into a dungeon to rescue. I hope not rescue her. I'm kind of done rescuing people, but maybe we'll go down there, or maybe Zelda will be doing the dungeoneering while the two Links from different timelines are doing things above ground and in the sky.
See, look at that. We veered directly into like we've made our own fan game at this point. This is great.
There you go.
Can I put an idea out there?
Yeah, real quick, let's hear it.
Oh yeah, what about if those islands up top, which are, you know, limited spaces, what if those are your dungeons? You know, you you have the ground, Hyrule Field to explore, but when you go up, that's your space to maneuver
I'm
around.
into that. Yeah.
That's a sort of like reverse dungeon upside down thing. That's great. I'm very into it. That would be new for Zelda. Well, we have tons more Nintendo to talk about in just a minute, but first we will take a very, very short break. So take a deep breath. We will gather our thoughts because there's tons more Nintendo announcements to talk about. Today was awesome. IGN will return right after this, so don't go anywhere. Yeah.